Halloween is almost here, and it is my favorite time of the year. Now, if you have ever been to the Hood household, you know that we go all out. In fact, we put up all of the monsters and the decorations and all of that stuff. This year, though, we're doing it a little differently. We have decided to retheme the house, and we're going to be turning our home into Disney's Haunted Mansion. I'm so excited about this. My wife has been buying gobs and gobs of decorations, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I share that with you because I started to think about how it would be a lot of fun to do a Halloween-themed episode today, since my favorite time of the year is coming. And in fact, there might be one or two more of these since we have some time. I got a question a couple days ago from a lady who asked how she can fix her reading. She said, I'm just broken. I used to be such a good reader when I was a kid. I used to be able to sit down for hours and really enjoy a book. But now that I'm an adult, I'm broken. And I've been talking, I did a few episodes recently about the art of reading slowly as an adult and those kinds of things and the benefits, but we haven't really talked about why it's so freaking hard to read a book now. What is going on? Well, I have defined 9 different goblins. I'm going to call them goblins because we're sticking with a Halloween theme. These are things that are attacking you as you read, and I'd like to help you identify them so that you can know when they're there and eradicate them. Now, a goblin is probably the best metaphor when it comes to Halloween monsters because goblins are those things that sit in the basement and they hide in the dark and they're just gross, nasty, horrible things and they attack you when you're least expecting it. So this is a good metaphor for people who are trying to read a great book and then get attacked by random stuff. So with that in mind, let's get into it, and this is going to be a lot of fun. Here we go. Woo! Welcome back, everybody, to the Read Well podcast. This is episode number 65. I'm so glad that you're here, and I hope today as we talk, you will get a sense of maybe why you struggle to read a book and find some help there. So I'm going to jump right in. I have 9 goblins identified, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. My first goblin is the goblin of embarrassment. Now, here's how this works. You might be sitting there wanting to read a book and you're in public, but you think to yourself, it's kind of weird that I'm reading Plato. So let's say you have Plato in your hand or Emerson or something that's a little more heady, and you're a little embarrassed to have that in public because you don't want people to think, oh, she's so full of herself. Look at her over there. She's reading Plato. Who does she think she is? And on and on and on. And so you might have this voice pop up in your head that's like, I really should only read this stuff at home when nobody's looking. I can't bring Plato to a family party. I can't bring Plato to my kids' school play and read it while we're waiting for the play to start. People will think that I'm weird and they'll think that I'm full of myself. And so embarrassment kicks in, and that is the very first goblin that you should be aware of when you're reading. You know what? It's okay to read Plato in public. It's just fine. You should embrace your public Plato and let that weird flag fly. Just fly the flag, right? It's perfectly fine. And what's going to happen, what you'll find, is that people might ask you, what are you reading? And if you share that you're reading, Phaedrus by Plato, or you're reading an essay by Emerson, they might go, really, wow, and then ask you some questions, and you might be able to inspire somebody else to read something that they thought they weren't able to read previously. So be an example, right, people? Go out and read Plato. Okay, the second goblin is the one I think most of us struggle with, and this is the inner critic. So this goblin is a little nasty. If you've ever tried to write something, a paper or a book or a novel or a story, you get really excited to start, but then once you put down the first couple words, the critic comes in and says, wow, this is really terrible. You're doing a horrible job. You are not a writer. You're not good enough for this. You start to edit yourself far before the work is ever ready to be edited. And that same thing happens when we're reading books. You'll open up a book and you'll be a page or two in, and that inner critic will step in and say, you're not getting this. You're not smart enough. You're not grasping the content here. This is above your pay grade and so on. And you start to criticize yourself. You really start to, find all of the weaknesses for you. Last night in book club, we had such a great conversation about Walt Whitman's poem, Song of Myself. There's this comment where somebody said, I feel really embarrassed because sometimes I don't get what the poem means. And a lot of us nodded our head and said, yeah, that happens with poetry. It happens with novels. But also, it happens to all of us because we allow our inner critic to attack ourselves. You know, when you're reading poetry or a book, it's easy to think, I'm not getting this, so I'm going to read something else. But another member of the book club said, it's okay if you don't get it. In fact, just let the words wash over you, read them a few times, and eventually you will get it. It will sink in. You just have to be patient with yourself. I think reading is this sort of hobby, this experience, this skill of forgiveness, right? Where you have to be kind to yourself. You have to know that you're a busy person, that you might not understand what Plato is talking about at first, right? It can be complicated. You might not understand what Emerson's going on about. That is perfectly fine. The goal here is not to be a scholar out of the gate. It is to spend time with great works and learn from them. Yes, the third goblin is another one that you're all suffering with, and I know this because you talk to me about it all the time. I get comments. People are constantly messaging me with this one. This is the goblin of perfectionism, and this is how it works. So you sit down to read a book, and you get all cozy in your chair. This is what it looks like to get cozy, I guess. You kind of wiggle in your chair. And then when you sit down and you open up the book, you look like this, and then there's this thought that pops into your head that the scene isn't right, that your setting isn't right. You can't actually read a book unless you light the perfect candle. And you have to have your cup of tea with you. And of course, it has to be dead silent. We can't have any noise, right? The world has to be just so in order for you to actually read your book. And because the kids are over and playing, and because the laundry is going and the washing machine is like ka-clunk, 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 because you stuck some sneakers in there, I don't know. You just tell yourself, I can't read right now because things aren't perfect. I'll read later once everything is perfect. Well, you know the catch line to this, it's never going to be perfect. I have yet in my life to have a day where I sit there and go, wow, everything is perfect. That hasn't happened yet. Because even if it's quiet, and even if there's a candle lit and I have a cup of tea, my lower back hurts because I picked up something too heavy yesterday, or I got a headache, or I have a client at work that has emailed me about. You get it, right? You get how this works. Life will never be perfect, but this goblin is very devious. He will come up and bite you right when you're ready to enjoy a book and tell you, nope, not yet. He's really sort of the goblin of good intention. He puts the seed in your head of like, you're going to read. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. We just have to get some things in order first. And you know in your heart that that's just not going to happen. So you really have to defeat this goblin and just start reading your book. Okay, the next one is related. I think they're brothers in some way, or maybe sisters. I don't know. I don't want to pick. But the next goblin is the goblin of self-sabotage. And this is where you've sat down and you've committed and you're reading your book. And then for whatever reason, you self-sabotage this whole reading project, right? You know in your head that you want to read. You know you want to be there. But you sort of allow your brain to think of reasons as to why you shouldn't be there. And you start to think, I really should do the dishes right now. My goodness, this carpet is messy. I should vacuum. I can't read in a room with messy carpet. What kind of person am I unless I vacuum my carpet? And you start to find little things and you place them at a higher value than reading. And you just sabotage the entire experience of being with your book. This happens all the time, and you have to get good at catching yourself doing it. And it's hard, right? Because we do this with all of our goals. If you're trying to lose weight, you'll self-sabotage by going to the gym and working really hard, but then when you come home, you eat an entire box of Oreos, cookies, because you quote unquote earned it, right? I burned a lot of calories today. I stood on the treadmill for an hour and a half. I must have room for some cookies. I'll eat some cookies. That's called self-sabotaging. We do it in fitness, and we also do it in reading books. Okay, the fifth goblin is the project goblin. Now, I think last week I did an episode on what's called the dip. It's this emotional roller coaster that we experience when we start anything new in life, and reading a book is starting something new. You start on page 1 and you get excited and you're really enjoying the book, but then after a while, you kind of go down into what we call the dip. And that's because either the book's not good and you should read something different, or it's really good and now you have to put in the work to sort of suck all of that marrow out of it, right? And so you have to take notes and you have to like sit up straight and be at a desk. Or if it's fiction, you at least have to turn on all of the receptors and really try and, taste the tastes and smell the smells and hear the hears and all of that stuff. It takes work to be a good reader, and your brain goes, I'd rather just watch Netflix. This book's a project. And so then you become what I call the person who gets through a book. We don't want to ever get through a book. We want to enjoy it. But this is the project goblin. It takes this precious thing called a book and it turns it into another item on your to-do list. It makes it a project, a thing that has to get done. And because it becomes that, it's no longer interesting or fun. Now, my wife gets attacked by the all-nighter goblin. The all-nighter goblin is hilarious. I laugh every time she brings this up. I don't know. She's the only person I know of that actually struggles with this one. But if you're listening to this, sweetheart, I love you. I think you're the greatest person in the world. But this is a funny goblin. And I'm sure there are a few people listening to this that can sort of commiserate with her and say, yes, I too struggle with the all-nighter goblin. Here's how it goes. My wife tells herself that she cannot read a book unless she reads it all in one sitting. She has to read the whole thing cover to cover. Otherwise, she loses the thread of it and it becomes less interesting, less impactful. She's done this a few times where she got into a book and she just like turned off work and family and kids for like 2 days and just sat on the couch and like burned through it and loved it, right? She has to be in that world 100% in order for the book to work for her. If she has to start it and then stop it and then start it and stop it, it feels to her like she's watching a movie where you hit pause and walk away and now it's not as good. I hear that. I hear that argument. But wow, how often do we have days on top of days to do nothing but sit and read? I don't have that time. You probably don't have that time. And if you let this goblin into your life, you're never going to read another book. Okay, the guilty goblin is a little snot. The guilty goblin really bothers me, and I get attacked by the guilty goblin all the time. I hope you guys are liking this Halloween thing we got going on. I love Halloween. It's so good. It's so much fun. Anyway, the guilty goblin is the one that sort of pokes you in the shoulder when you're reading and says, dude, what are you doing? Why are you reading a book right now? You should be a better father and go fishing with your child. Or you should be reading your book to your child. Or you should be doing anything other than reading this book because you're a bad human being for taking time for yourself. And you start to feel really bad for, doing that, a little self-care. Reading is a thing that you do by yourself. It is a private experience. And for some reason, we feel bad about taking care of ourselves, about doing something for me. You probably suffer from this, thinking, I haven't called mom in a while. I should probably go do that instead of being selfish and reading this book, whatever it is. There are a million reasons as to why you could or just are tempted into feeling guilty. Just please be aware of it, know that it's happening, know that it's normal, and be kind to yourself. I do this all the time. And I really have to say, yeah, you're right. I should go fishing with my son. But I'm going to read a few pages first, and I'm going to enjoy this book, and then we'll go fishing. It's not one or the other. You can do both, right? You can take care of people in your life, but you can also take care of yourself. Goblin number 8 is something that I think we've all struggled with. I shouldn't speak for all of us, but I know I have. It is the I lost my way goblin. The I lost my way goblin looks like this. You're in a book and you're loving it. You're reading and reading and reading and you think, wow, this is really good. And then life happens, right? You get into a car accident or you start a new class in college and it just consumes your time, or you get asked to do a project at work and you're now stuck in that for a month. And then one day you're looking at your bookshelf and you're like, oh yeah, that book. That was a really good book. And you open it up and you flip through it and you find your bookmark and it's halfway in there and you think, I don't remember what's going on or where I was at. And so I'm not going to read. And you put the book down with the best of intentions to one day come back to it, knowing full well you probably never will. This is the lost my way goblin. It happens all the time. And there's a couple things you can do. If you're taking notes when you're reading a book, that's very helpful because you can always reference your notes and be like, I remember where I'm at. You can pick up and sort of, get going again. If it was a great book and you have to start over, so be it, start over. That's better than never reading it again. But for Pete's sake, don't just set it down and never touch it again. If that book was moving you and you loved it and you want to get back into it, get back into it. It's fine. You don't have to have everything perfect. Okay, the last goblin is a pernicious little punk. I don't like this one, but it shows his head all the time, and it's a little ugly. This is the offended goblin. Now, here's the thing, people. Sometimes you're going to read a book that will offend you. It's going to happen. And that's a good thing. That's actually a good thing. To be offended means you're being challenged in the way that you think, and you are being asked to consider something a different way. Now, we get offended because we are set in our beliefs and we don't realize we're set in our beliefs. We all are. Politically, religiously, scholastically, whatever it is, we have got life figured out to a T. We have all the right answers and everybody else is wrong. Now, you might not expressly agree with that, but deep down inside, you're pretty set in your ways, and you might not like to admit it, but you are. And because of that, if you read a book that is in any way different from how you live or think, you could very well be offended. And that sort of offended goblin will pop up its head and say, this book is awful. I'm not going to read this book because it's not at all what I think about God or politics or religion or academics or whatever, or my field of study. So you throw it at the wall and you pick up something else. But that's a sad thing, right? Half of the benefit, I just picked half. I don't know what the proportion is, but a large benefit to reading books is to be challenged. It is to see things differently. Again, I'm going to go back to Song of Myself by Walt Whitman, which we read in our book club. That whole poem, Walt is reaching through the pages, shaking you, saying, it's time to think differently. I mean, can you imagine a world where nobody was willing to do that? Where we all just thought, I am not at all interested in learning a new way of seeing the world. I only want to see it my way. You're all wrong. This is why I love books, you guys. I love learning about different cultures and languages and people, and it has just been a blessing in my life. And so be very careful of the offended goblin. If you start to feel offended, hot under the skin, jittery in your fingernails, I don't even know if that's a thing. My fingernails have never jittered, but pretend they did. If that happened, just recognize it as a good thing and not a bad thing. You're asked to consider a new perspective. Okay, hey, that's those are the 9 goblins. Now don't leave yet. I've got a couple of announcements for you, things I'm very excited about. As you all know, I am launching my dream bookstore. I've always wanted to own a bookstore. I am so excited. And you've all been so kind in sort of cheering me on in Facebook, where I write every day about the art of reading deeply. Hint, hint, you should go check out my Facebook page if you want daily reading inspiration. Talk about it, of course, on YouTube and on the podcast, but I have decided to set the opening day for the bookstore as October 23rd, 2024. Now, when I say open, what does that mean? Is there going to be a physical bookstore that you can go to? No, not yet. I wish that there was, but I have to start small and grow this so that one day I can afford a physical bookstore. So what I'm doing is I'm in the process of building up the inventory. I'm curating selections for you. I'm trying to find really great products that I love that go along with reading to make the experience of reading better. And all of those things will be ready on the edgewaterbookstore.com website. And on October 23rd at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, that's 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be having a launch party on Facebook. So if you go to the Read Well podcast on Facebook, you'll see a live event there right now. And go ahead and click interested, or even better, that you're going to go to that and join me live on October 23rd, where I will be doing a tour of all of the products. I'll be showing you around the little warehouse I've built here and how I make the things that I'll be selling, as well as giving away some exclusive discounts. And everybody in that event will be getting a discount code for 10% off their first order as a thank you for spending time with me during the grand opening. All right, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed learning about the 9 Goblins. And also, I would love to hear from you in any comment of any form, whether it's on the YouTube channel, in the podcast, on Facebook. Let me know how you're planning to spend your Halloween, what books you're planning to read this year, what questions you have about reading deeply, questions about the community and how I can make it better for you. I love this so much. I love being here with you, and we're challenging each other to read these really fantastic books. So thank you for being here, and until next time, as always, remember to read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. I'll see you all next week.